Good afternoon, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is David Bellamy and I'm Head of Conservation at Manx Wildlife Trust. And it's my great honour today to welcome Victoria and Kate here to the Isle of Man, both from Vincent Wildlife Trust in Ireland, to discuss and educate us on this amazing but elusive species of stoat here on the Isle of Man. Personally, I've had a long interest in stoats here. 15 years ago when I was at university, I did my dissertation on stoats on the Isle of Man. But they're certainly very elusive on the Isle of Man. And in my whole life, and I spent a lot of time outside, probably too much time outside, I've only ever seen one stoat on the Isle of Man alive and one as roadkill. So they are very, very difficult to see. It's been nice in recent years. We've seemed to have had an uptick in reports, and I think that's reflecting that more people are out with cameras these days, and hopefully more people are interested and looking for wildlife. But there remains very much that we don't know about stoats here on the Isle of Man, including their numbers and their conservation status. So I think that the timing of this talk is brilliant. So thank you both very much for coming to the Isle of Man on a lovely sunny bank holiday weekend for our benefit. So by way of introduction, Victoria Knight is Vincent Wildlife Trust's Island Species Conservation Officer and is based in County Cork. She joined VWT in April 2024, and her work focuses on the lesser horseshoe bat, the Irish stoat and the pine marten. Vicky has held conservation roles with non-government organisations, academia and local governments across the Caribbean, the UK, Ireland and a British overseas territory. Her experience includes habitat restoration, species recovery, biosecurity and public engagement. Originally from North Wales, Vicky's early connection with nature inspires her continued passion for biodiversity and community-based conservation. And Dr. Kate McInerney is Vincent Wildlife Trust's Island Mammal Programme Manager and is based in County Galway. Kate has over 40 years' experience working in the conservation and research of Irish mammals, particularly the lesser horseshoe bat, which we also have here on the Isle of Man. Kate covers a wide range of duties, from engaging with statutory and other bodies, managing bat reserves, fundraising, producing educational material and conducting practical research. Kate was a co-founder of Bat Conservation Ireland, co-authored Ireland's Lesser Horseshoe Bat Species Action Plan and sits on the committee of Dark Sky Ireland. So without any further delay, ladies, over to you. Thank you.
Over here. Thank you very much for coming out this afternoon. It's a bank holiday weekend, but no better time to learn all about stoats. We're very glad. We're very, very glad to be here. And without further ado, before we say anything about stoats, I'd just like to give a little bit of background to Vincent Wildlife Trust. It's not a wildlife trust really in the sense of other wildlife trusts. We're not a member of the Wildlife Trust's kind of family as such. It was set up in 1975 by the Honourable Vincent Weir. So we're 50 years in existence. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary. And we're small. We're a specialist mammal conservation group. I'll just do this so I'm not looking away from you all the time. It's a specialist mammal conservation group and research organisation. And we specialise in long-term conservation and solutions for rare or difficult to track mammals, and I think the stoat certainly ticks the box of difficult to track mammals. And we do that in Britain, Ireland and also in parts of mainland Europe. We are just 23 staff. We have 8 trustees who make sure that we follow our strategic plan and behave properly. We have 4 PhD students. Up until now they've all pretty much been based in Britain, but they carry out conservation projects that then lead to conservation solutions which we can then put into action on the ground. So although they're academic studies, they have a very practical conservation application afterwards. Our headquarters are in Ledbury in Herefordshire. We've staff based there, but we've staff based elsewhere in England, Scotland, Wales and in Ireland. We're a non-membership trust. So when the Honourable Vincent Weir created the trust, it was his own money that he used. And when he stepped aside and retired from the trust, he left quite a substantial amount of money there on investment. We try to survive on that. You can imagine the markets are not favourable at the moment, haven't been for a while. So our investments kind of keep the core work going, keep the lights on. But then for us to do practical work, we need to raise grants, and we've been doing that more recently. And if you go on our websites, particularly our newly launched UK website, you'll see there's a lot of new projects that are up and running with substantial grants from, say, Heritage Lottery Fund and that. So we're very happy to do that because it brings along community engagement as well. We don't lobby or campaign, so we don't go on social media and give out about people too much. We tend rather to exert our kind of influence through policy and by showing examples of how work has been successful in the hope that other people will take that on board. And that's the way we operate and have been doing so successfully. So we're here to talk about the Manx stoat, which up until recently we've been very much calling the Irish stoat, but you'll discover that it's subspecies, they're the same, just when in Rome. So when on the Isle of Man, it's the Manx stoat. And it was Vicky came up with this title, It's All in the Tail. And that's because we very rarely see stoats in the wild, but the one thing that they all have, when we do see them, we're rushing across a hedgerow in front of us or a road in front of us, is they have a black tip to the tail. So that's why Vicky described or included It's All in the Tail, because it can be difficult to distinguish it from other species, but they, no matter what form they're taken, and this is in some parts of the distribution, their beautiful sandy brown fur becomes completely white in winter, giving rise to this beautiful ermine fur, which is sought after by royalty and the judiciary in the past. But they'll always have the black tip to the tail. And it's thought that this is there to confuse predators. Research has been done to show that under experimental conditions, that if there's a black spot put on model stoats elsewhere in the body, predators can quite easily zone in on the black mark on the main part of the body, and so obviously they'll capture the animal, whereas if it's on the tip, they get distracted, they go for the tip, and before they know it, the stoat's gone. So it's very much there for a reason. Where do they sit in the animal kingdom? They belong to the order carnivore or carnivora, so they are carnivores. They have canines and they're very, very evolved to hunt down live prey. But they have quite a varied diet, but they are within the carnivores. And then within that, we break them down into associated animals, so they belong to the family Mustelidae. So you'll find us using the word mustelid during the course of the talk. So it's a scientific name for the group, but in English it's kind of called the weasel family. It does include the weasel itself, but it also includes badgers, otters, pine martens, polecats, and of course our stoats. So it's a collective name for them. They are the largest family within the carnivores, about 60 different species worldwide. So they're a very, very well adapted and very successful group of animals. And they inhabit all parts of the world except Australia, Antarctica, and they're absent from New Guinea, Madagascar, and Antarctica. And this is what some of them appear like. So mustelids of the world, just a brief tour of the mustelids of the world. Here's our stoat that you find in Britain and the rest of Europe, Mustela armenia. We have our badgers, we have our otters, and what's missing from this is an example of pine marten. So with those three mustelids, you have the animals that are adapted very, very much to a particular habitat. So our badgers are adapted for burrowing, our otters for aquatic habitat, and then our pine martens are for arboreal or tree dwelling. But sitting in the middle of them all is the stoat, which can do all three very, very efficiently. Mustelids are known for having long, slender bodies and small legs. and generally a squashed, kind of a flattened skull, and that enables them again to adapt a burrowing existence. And you'll see some beautiful videos Vicky will show later of just how well they're able to get in and out through small openings. So, Mostellas of the Isle of Man, we have our Manx stoat, and you also have the feral ferret, which is the domesticated form of your polecat, but I'm reliably informed that you don't have the true polecat, Mostella praetorius, on the island, but you have the ferret or feral ferret living in the wild, may have escaped from captive ones, or the hybrid with polecat. Right, so where do we find stoat worldwide? Generally it is found on higher latitudes, so we have it all over kind of North America, we've Ireland, Britain, the Nordic countries, and right across. So it's absent from the southern warmer climes, and it's up here. The eagle-eyed among you will have seen red here on New Zealand, and that's because it was introduced there in the 1940s by humans to control the rabbit population, which had been introduced by humans, and both species are now causing a lot of problems to the native flora and fauna of New Zealand. But in fact, we're learning a lot from colleagues on the islands in New Zealand who are studying to try and eradicate the animal. And I've discovered over the years that if you want to learn about an animal, talk to the people who are trying to get rid of them, because they often have a lot of really good information about the behaviour and the habits and where you'll find them. So it's good to keep those lines of communication open. So now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of subspecies. A subspecies, we start off with a species which has a very distinctive genetic structure or features. And then for various reasons, maybe because of isolation, you might have a group from a species moving, getting access to an island. Over time, they develop adaptations and behavioural and maybe changes in their morphology, for example, their fur, to adapt to that particular situation. And over time, they develop a distinct genetic differentiation or appearance. And we then are able to call that a subspecies. Now, they can still interbreed with the original species, but they're distinct enough to be considered a subspecies. And that's is most often seen when animals make it from maybe a mainland area to an island, where then they're isolated from their founder population, and they can pretty much, develop their own particular mannerisms. And maybe people do the same, but we're just talking about the animals in this case. So this is, don't worry too much about this, but this shows how stoats worldwide have developed, become identified into 34 different subspecies. This was a study done in America because they were specifically looking at the subspecies that developed along this area here of the North Pacific coastline. But here we have, they included stoats found in the Isle of Man and in Ireland, and they are known as Mostella erminia hibernica. So they are distinct genetically from stoats found elsewhere in the world. Endemic subspecies, we say endemic because they're just found on those islands. So as you can see, this much more recognisable map here, we have Ireland, and we always now include the Isle of Man when we're talking about the stoats. We have limited information on their distribution. Legally in Ireland, both in the north of the island, in Northern Ireland, they're protected by Northern Ireland legislation, and then in the Republic of Ireland, where we work, they're protected under Republic of Ireland legislation. It's illegal to capture them, to hunt them, to exploit them, to persecute them, except under license in certain situations. So it is important, it just gives a general awareness to the animal to have that. But as of now, they're not protected here. Worldwide, they're considered to be, of conservation-wise, of least concern. Now that means that they're widespread, and currently our knowledge about them doesn't raise any concerns about their numbers, but they're still worthy of conservation. compared to other species where we may be talking about much smaller numbers and they could be vulnerable or endangered or even extinct, but not so with the stoat. So how did we get to this situation where we have a stoat on the island of Ireland and the island of Man, Isle of Man? Well, we have a fossil record, and fossils, we have two fossil record histories from Ireland, and both of them are from caves. One going back 27,000 to 35,000 years ago, and then a more recent one, which in geological terms 10,000 years is nothing. So more recently, but they refer to times when the islands would have been covered in ice, or just after the glaciers were beginning to retreat and we were entering into a kind of an interglacial period. So what we, from research and DNA analysis of the samples and from other parts, we believe that the stoats, there was a land bridge linking the islands, so Ireland, Isle of Man, Britain, with the rest of Europe. So there would have been a land bridge, or we could have been talking about kind of an ice sheet. And that allowed the animals to move. And today, where you find stoats at the very high altitudes, where there is snow a part of the year or maybe all year round, they can live quite easily under the snow hunting lemmings. And we believe that's how they would have survived on our islands back at that time. We know from genetic studies that it's not just from fossil records. We know from genetic studies of more recent animals that ours are the same subspecies. And we know that the DNA from both sets are much, much older than those that are in Britain. So what researchers believe happened is that the first set of stoats that moved across just after the ice was going were cold tolerant, so they were able to come across before the temperature really rose. As the temperature rose, Ireland and the Isle of Man were separated with rising sea levels, ice melting, rising sea levels. So our stoats and your stoats were already on the islands and then separated from the other populations. Britain would have remained attached to mainland Europe for longer, and it's possible then as the temperature rose on the continent, stoats more tolerant of warm conditions came across and displaced maybe the cold tolerant stoat. But what's important is that the stoats came to us early on, were very able to survive under the colder conditions, and became genetically distinct, and they're not found elsewhere. So that's why we talk about them being cold tolerant. So a few facts about the stoats, the Manx Irish stoat versus the British stoat. Weight-wise, now there is a lot of variation even within a country between stoats you find in the northern part and the southern parts of even the same country. But these lower measurements here refer to weights and lengths of females, and these are the weights and lengths of males. There's a big difference. There's a sexual dimorphism between male and female stoats. Male stoats can be 1.5 to 2 times the size of a female, and that's the same with the stoats found in Britain. The obvious difference if you have a dead specimen is that in Ireland and in Manx, the line between the lovely sandy brown fur on the dorsal or the back of the animal and the creamy white on the belly in the Manx and Irish stoats is 90% or more wiggly. It's irregular. Whereas in the British stoat, it's as if somebody took a ruler and drew a very, very definite straight line. Now, these kind of things can develop on island populations for fur colouring because of the local conditions. In Ireland and the Isle of Man, we wouldn't have the same very cold conditions as you'd have, say, in Scotland, where the animal turns white or where you have this clear markation. It's thought to do with lying snow, something to do with that. But the important thing is that we can, when we have a dead specimen, we can clearly tell what we have. And also ours do not turn white in winter. so we don't get this beautiful ermine fur. Where do you find them? And I discovered, I think that might be the Manx name for it, am I correct? Yes. And that's the Esog, it's got its own Irish name. So habitat-wise, they're really found anywhere where there's sufficient cover, because they're so small and they are very tasty morsel for a predator, for a raptor. So they will cling to cover or move through cover where that is, but they can be found in a wide variety of habitats. Hunting skills, I mentioned earlier, they can burrow, they can swim, they can climb, they can swim, and they go underground. Opportunistic, although mainly rabbits, rodents, rats, mice, very good, adapted for hunting those. Dens, they often will use the den of the previous occupant that they've consumed, which is very pleasant way of finding somewhere to live. Activity-wise, they are solitary and territorial, and they use both anal glands and other glands on the other parts of their body to mark their scent, to mark their territory. It's more offensive behaviour rather than defensive rather than offensive, although I imagine the smell is not particularly pleasant. Reproduction-wise, they are really interesting in that they mate over the summer months, but there's delayed implantation, which means that the female does not give birth till the following year. And in fact, it's a means of survival in that the male will seek out a female in her natal den, will mate with her, but also will mate with every female kit that's in there, even though they can be only a few weeks old and they're blind and deaf and hairless. But they are sexually mature almost from the moment that they are actually born. And that is a means by which the male, who wouldn't normally encounter other females, can do so. So it's getting access to females at that time. And then they'll go their separate ways when the family disperse. They can have between 6 to 9 kits, and they generally live independently after about 12 weeks. And if you see a group of stoats together, it will be a female and her kits of that year, rather than anything else. Because once they disperse in the autumn, they're going to be living a solitary life. Behaviour, nocturnal in the winter, but they are active by day in the summer. Obviously, males are looking for females, and females are looking for food for their young when they're lactating as well. Predators, foxes, cats, and raptors, dogs. Parasites. The best known is an internal nematode that inhabits their nasal cavities, and there can be a very, very high parasitic load on the stoats that have been dissected in Ireland. Can be 50, 60, even higher percentage. And the nematode, it's a worm, and it erodes the bones of the nasal cavities, and they can have a very, very high parasitic load. And it's thought that that might be an explanation for some of the antics you see stoats do, captured maybe on film, where you see them throwing themselves around and jumping around. Some people think that's a way to bemuse a prey item like a rabbit, but it might just be that they're driven crazy by this nematode in their nasal cavity. Could be a mixture. We don't know an awful lot about them still, but because they've been on the island of Ireland for a very long time, they have made their way into books about the myths and legends of wildlife. And what we do when we don't have facts to explain what's happening, we use legend and lore and myth. And I think there's a place for both. Obviously we need the science for conservation, but it's nice to look back and see how they were considered in the past. And so you were advised to greet a stoat politely to avoid bad luck, because they can understand us. A screeching stoat in Donegal signifies there's a mist rolling in, or the person who insulted a stoat could expect to lose all their chickens. But I'd imagine there's a lot of insults thrown at the stoat after they've got all the chickens by the humans. So I'm leaving the world of myth and lore behind and handing you over to my colleague Vicky, who's going to provide facts and figures to explain what we're up to. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So for the next 20 minutes or so, I try not to bore you to death. I'm going to be talking about studying stoats and what Vincent Wildlife Trust have been doing to try and find out more about our unique subspecies. So just to start with, as David already mentioned, they are very difficult species to study. So the first reason is because they are elusive. So just out of interest, who has actually seen a living stoat in here? Okay, more than I thought. Who's seen more than 2 alive? Okay, maybe they're not as elusive as I thought. But yeah, generally they are very difficult to see. So they're very small, obviously, they're fast, and they tend to avoid wide open places. So they also leave very few field tracks and signs behind. So if you think of a badger, for example, over in the UK or in Ireland, you very rarely see them as well. They're quite elusive. However, if you know a little bit about them, you can tell when they're around. You know, they have latrines, so they leave their droppings around very obvious places. They have a big badger set, and to and from that badger set, they have very worn paths that they use. So you can see where they've been without seeing them, if you know what I mean. Whereas with stoats, they don't tend to leave any very obvious signs. So as Kate said, they do mark their territory. They can use droppings or scats for that. But yeah, they're very small and they're not put in obvious places. So again, very difficult to see. So as a result, they've become very understudied. So not even just our subspecies, across their whole range, they're very understudied species. So that's why Vincent Wildlife Trust have taken a particular interest in trying to find out more about them. So we're trying to do this using non-invasive ways of monitoring. So this is trying to avoid capturing them, you know, disturbing them. We want to come up with a way of not disturbing them or annoying them in any way. So one of the ways that we have been trying to monitor is using mistellas. So this is a photo of a mistela trap. So it was developed by the Dutch Small Mustelid Foundation, so over in the Netherlands. And this is a novel method of detecting small mustelids, so your stoats and your weasels. So Vincent Wildlife Trust have been involved in 2 studies in Ireland. So let me get my names right. So David Hughes from Queen's University, he did his master's project on using mistellas. And we also did another study using volunteers. So as you can see from the picture, this is your mistela trap. So it's basically a box. This box is open, so it would usually be closed. You then have a tube, so that's how the animal gets in and out of the mistela. So the theory is, if you think of how a stoat looks, or a weasel as well, they're small and they're long, so they're perfectly adapted to go into small holes like this tube. So in theory, we think, oh, they see this hole and they want to go in it to see what's in there. So also what's in there is a trail camera. So the trail camera is triggered by heat or by movement. So anything that enters that box is going to trigger the camera and is going to be recorded. We also have here a little canister, and in there is a lure. So what we've used in the past is a rabbit scent lure. So it's a liquid, and I think you can buy it off the internet, is that right? Yeah. And you soak a cotton pad in it, and you put it in there, and that's to try and encourage the stoat to go in, so it thinks that there's food. So that is your mistela. So we've done 2 camera trap based methods with the 2 studies that we did. So we compared the both. So you have your camera in the mistela, like I've mentioned. You also have a camera outside the mistela. So this is to see whether there's stoats passing by, but they're not actually entering the mistela trap. So we put these along habitats such as stone walls, hedgerows, woodland edges, field boundaries and limestone pavements. So these are the sort of habitats that we associate with stoats. So quite cluttered or have a lot of cover for them to hide in. So I have some videos here to show you, so will it just play? Yeah, so this is footage from the external cameras that we got. So that one had something in its mouth. Right, and then we have some footage from the internal camera. So very playful animals. And you can see here that it's actually sniffing out, checking out that lure. So yeah, we think that that has encouraged some in. There you go. So interestingly, we also got a lesser horseshoe bat in one of our Mistellas to Kate's delight. So random. It would be the last animal I would ever think would go in. But we also had, I'm just going to move this over here. We also had other mammals use Mistellas. So the pie martins, so they squoze in, and we've got quite a few of them. Bank voles, wood mice, pygmy and greater white-toothed shrews, and also longtails. So, this might show it could be a potential monitoring technique for monitoring other mammals, other small mammals, because obviously, a badger can't get in a Mistela or a fox. So a bit about the positives and negatives of using a Mistela. So they are being used by stoats in Ireland, which is great news, because there has been studies elsewhere where stoats haven't gone in to the Mistellas. So for example, our colleagues in Britain did a study, and they were getting stoats captured on the external camera, and they were just climbing on top of the Mistellas. They weren't actually entering them. However, they did get a lot of weasels using them. So great news that our Irish stoats, they might have developed more curiosity maybe. They are entering the Mistela traps. Another huge positive is the reduction in the number of videos inside the Mistela. So in our 2019 study, we had 12 survey sites. So at the end of that study, the external cameras captured 8,095 videos. So that's a lot of videos for people to go through and check if there's a stoat there. So that's a huge amount. And in contrast, the internal cameras got 1,520. So still a lot of videos, but far less. So that's a huge positive. So another positive, a really good one, is that you can put the Mistellas in cluttered habitats, and it's not going to increase false triggers. So you think that these cameras are triggered by movement and by heat. So the external camera is not only going to capture more different animals. So in Ireland we have the pie marten, we have badgers, we have deer. So that's going to trigger the camera. But also, if you're putting them in a cluttered habitat, every time the wind blows and if there's vegetation, that might also trigger the camera. So that's why it's reduced in the inside the Mistela. So huge positive there. Some negatives, this one isn't a huge one, but they're quite heavy. So when you're putting them out, you might need a few more hands. They can be more expensive, so obviously you have to build the box. But again, there's ways around this, get volunteers to come and help you build them. Also, I don't know whether expense, when you think of the time it would take to go through the videos on an external camera, time is money. So you are saving a lot of time on the internal camera. The one standout negative is that during both of these studies, more sites had stoat detections on the external cameras than they did the internal cameras. So there were some sites where the Mistellas weren't picking up stoats, but the external was. But, you know, is there ways around this? We haven't tested out different laws. Is there a law that they think is irresistible? And this is something that I am really keen on looking into. So things like audio laws, would there be sounds that would encourage them into the mustela, or another scent law? So obviously they're mustelids, so they communicate through scent. So could we use scent glands, anal scent glands? If we put some scent in there, would that encourage them in? So there's a lot of ways to think of trying to improve them. So overall, they are a usable technique to monitor small mustelids, but it could be improved on. And also another negative is that, well, not negative, but if you were given the task to find out the distribution of stoats across the whole of the Isle of Man, you're not going to want to use this technique. It would take a long time to do. So it's very much a technique to monitor a small targeted area. So that's where the Irish Stoat Citizen Science Survey came in. So this was launched in February 2023, and it ran up until February 2025, so just a few months ago. And we basically asked the public to report their sightings of stoats. So the aims of this study were to generate baseline data on stoat distribution throughout the island of Ireland, and also to spread awareness and improve identification skills among the public. So we did this with 3 partners, so the National Biodiversity Data Centre and also the Centre of Environmental Data and Recording. So they're basically the platforms that people already submit their sightings to. So really important we had them on board. And we also had University of Galway, who have done a lot of citizen science surveys. So it was great to have them inform on the survey. Also our funders, so Irish Environmental Network, National Parks and Wildlife Service, and also the Heritage Council. So just to give you an example of what someone would do if they saw a stoat, they would go onto the platforms that I mentioned earlier, and they would fill in this form. So we're getting a lot of information from each sighting. So they're able to zoom in on this map and give an exact location. They also give us the time, the date, what else is there? How many they saw, and the sort of sighting. So was it a live sighting? Was it roadkill, for example? So loads of different information we're getting. So once these were submitted, they are then sent in to us to verify. So you can see here, there's an option for you to upload a photo. Stoats being very small, very fast, it's not very often that you get a photo. So there's also a species description here. And the things that I'm looking for are the mention of that black tip to the tail, and also the small size. So if someone said, oh, I saw a brown and white animal, that's not enough information because we also have pine martens that are brown and white. So it's, you know, very important to give a good description. So being a citizen science survey, we rely massively on the public reporting their sightings. If they didn't, it wouldn't be a very good survey. So we did that through engagement, and that was through press releases, social media, newspaper and newsletter articles, public talks, and also radio interviews. And we also developed an identification guide as well. So being a citizen science survey, we obviously get photos and videos sent in. And this is great for us because we get to see a little bit more about their behaviour, but it's also an incredible tool for engagement. So this is a video that we put together from videos sent in, and that was for Heritage Week. So this is a week where we celebrate our cultural and also natural heritage. So a great thing to try and boost people reporting stoats. The music for this was developed by a band called Stoat, and they're from Dublin, so hopefully it'll play. So yeah, if anyone had seen that and seen a stoat in the last, year or so, then they're going to report their sightings, hopefully, anyway. So yeah, great engagement through videos. So just to give you an idea of the level of engagement we got, so this map here shows the total verified sightings during the period of 2021 to 2023. So this is the 2-year period before our survey started. So we got a total of 246 submissions, and then from them we were able to verify 164. So we'll now fast forward to during the survey. So this is during a time where we were actively engaging with people to submit their sightings. And you can see just from the map, there's a huge increase. So there was a total of 1,080 submissions, and then from them 816 were able to be verified. So that's nearly 5 times the amount from the 2 years before. So huge success for the engagement side. So just to say, we haven't yet analysed all the data for the whole 2-year project, but we did have some data analysed back in November. So I'll show you that now, but our final report will be out in the next few weeks, we hope. We've got to get a wiggle on. But yeah, I will show you what we did in November, which our new results will just be an updated version of what I'm going to show you now. So this work was done by Melanie Baker from Liverpool University, and she was supervised by our principal scientist at Vincent Wildlife Trust, so Jenny McPherson, and also by Patrick Wright from Wright Wildlife, who we work a lot with data and modelling. So they did this using correlation analysis and also habitat suitability and niche modelling. So basically with models, you put data into a model, so that we put in our data from the survey, and also put in data from mapping, so habitat mapping, for example. That's then able to generate a prediction. So that's what I'm going to show you now. So modelling predicted areas of low to high suitability. So if you look at these maps here, the green areas are areas of a predicted high habitat suitability. And then we go down the colours, and red and orange are the less likely areas that you are going to see stoats. It also suggests there's variation in habitat suitability between seasons. So you can see the autumn and winter map, there's a lot more red areas than there is in spring and summer. So they're using different habitats throughout the year. So the model also predicted that key habitats included bogs and agricultural lands. And interestingly, the modelling did not indicate that woodlands were an important habitat. So this is a habitat we always thought was a good site for stoats. And it might be, this is a model, it's a prediction. And that's why it's incredibly important for us to test the model. So models are only as good as the data that's put into them. Another really, really useful map for me is areas of high predicted stoat present but yielding very few records. So these green areas here are, the model is suggesting, is really good habitat, but we actually didn't get any sightings recorded from those areas. So in the last 4 months of the survey, I was then able to engage with the communities in those areas. So I went on local radio stations and wrote for local newspapers to try and drum up more reports. So bear with me, I'm nearly there. So the next steps, so the new records are currently being added to the model and rerun. So we're going to be updating those maps that I showed you earlier with the data after the engagement. We're then going to test the model. So as I said before, it's so important to test the model. So from the results, we will survey a subsample of sites with a high suitability but few records. So how are we going to do this? The method I showed you before, using Mistellas. So using these two survey methods, the citizen science survey and the modelling, and then being able to test that model with the mustelids in targeted areas, targeted small areas. So they work really well together. So rein us back in to the Isle of Man. So what do we know about the distribution? And the answer is not a huge amount. So David has shared this map with me. So between 1935 and 2025, there's around 200 sightings of Manx stoat reported. So there is a real need to find out more about the stoats on the Isle of Man. And how can we do this? So would a citizen science survey work here? Would Manx stoat use Mistellas? We don't know. You know, they have been separated from the Irish stoat for quite a while. So have they developed different behaviours so they might not go into the Mistellas? And you know, we're not going to know until it's done really if it will be successful. And I'll leave you with a final question. Would stoats benefit from being protected on the Isle of Man? So I wanted to finish on this video that's been uploaded onto YouTube. So this was captured on Marine Drive and was uploaded just last year. I don't know if I can fast forward it on here. Oh no, I'm starting again, I'm leaving it. So this is that behaviour that Kate was talking about before. You know, is that to try and hypnotise its prey, or is it because it has a terrible parasite in its head? Brilliant, so that's it from us. Thank you so much for coming along. I just wanted to say a huge thank you to David and Laura. I'm so sorry that this is on your bank holiday weekend, but thank you so much for helping settle.